welcome. Thanks for waiting. Really appreciate it. So, for those of you who are just joining us, a lot of you have been sticking around this whole time. We've been talking a lot about payments. It's a really exciting space. Obviously, Bitcoin is this kind of juggernaut of a newcomer. PayPal and eBay sort of pioneered in the early Web 1.0 era how we started getting money to each other quickly. When you guys look at this, what do you think about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency? Is it something that you think about how it's going to play into your business? I know you typically work with developers, Robert, but tell us a little bit about when you're thinking about PayPal's APIs, when you're looking at all this innovation in the payment space, where does PayPal fit into that?
Well, as a highly regulated company, PayPal can't officially support that currency, for instance, in the U.S., until it would be regulated. If it's never regulated by the U.S. government, then that's an issue, right? So are there ways that we can work with Bitcoin through a third party? Maybe.
Sneaky answer.
Would we develop APIs around that? Possibly. Those are things that, so we have nothing really to announce at this point,
yeah.
But there's very strong interest on the part of John Donahoe, you might know, and as well as David Marcus, our president. So we're looking at it very closely. In fact, we're having a meetup, a Bitcoin meetup this Thursday at Impact Hub in San Francisco. So we are following it very closely and even getting groups of people together to talk about it.
So let's see a show of hands. Who's used PayPal in the last week? How about in the last hour? All right, a couple of you.
Thank you. We like to hear that and see that.
So obviously we know what PayPal is. I'm not sure that many people know what your relationship to Accelerators is. Can you tell us a little bit about how you guys are working with Accelerators, what kind of meetups and hackathons you're doing? You're not running your own officially, right?
We're not running our own accelerator per se. We have made some experiments with accelerators in the past, that's with startup accelerators. Right now, we just started a program called Blueprint, Startup Blueprint, and that allows us to have partnership agreements with accelerators and incubators, angel funds, seed investment funds and such, whereby we'll give startups inside of accelerators and incubators essentially up to $50K in free transaction fees for a year and a half, and give them some special benefits, white glove technical support, mentorship, things of that nature. And that's sort of the first stage of Startup Blueprint for incubators and accelerators. And then we'll look towards how we can help startups get more customers, customer acquisition types of activities and such. So that's what we're doing with accelerators and incubators from the PayPal side. I think there's a story also from the eBay side before we jump into developers and such that Trista can give you.
So I've just joined a new group at eBay. I've been there for about 6 years, but we just started this new group. We've always made investments in companies, and we've been fairly acquisitive, particularly over the last couple of years. Up till now, we have made about 40 acquisitions as of September 2013. So we're definitely looking at startups to help us build out our functionality set, sometimes our product set. And some of the ways that we're doing that is by going to accelerators and incubators and working with the startups, doing a little bit more around potential BD, partnership, or as an exit strategy for some of those companies. So a lot of it will just depend on what type of parts of our business that those startups align with, which we can talk about in a little bit once you ask more questions.
We're just all going to share and maybe make this a little more friendly for everyone's ears. So in that, you're talking about bringing in startups. eBay recently acquired Braintree, the parent company of Venmo. How many people have used Venmo in the past week? Show of hands. All right, it's definitely smaller than PayPal. How does that kind of hotshot entrepreneurial, they're also really, interesting in the payment space, big user base. How does their company coming in, I don't know that it changes the way you look at things in eBay, but how do those play together, right, when you have a kind of small startup culture into your more existing, well-established place to work, I guess?
So I'll give a couple of anecdotal stories and then maybe pass it on to Robert because he probably has some in his experience as well. So I actually worked on the eBay local team. And the eBay local team was actually based on Milo.com, if you remember the dog. And so the way that has worked is that actually when they came into eBay, they continued to do the same product set that they were working on with a bit of a twist that was more aligned with some of the things that eBay was trying to do in terms of local delivery. And that team has actually created its own product. So it became its own product line. So that's one of the ways that startups end up working within the enterprise, is that they begin to be their own product line. Another success story that I might bring up is David Marcus, the president of PayPal, actually came in through an acquisition from Zong. And John Donahoe, our CEO and president of eBay, is very keen on having that entrepreneurial spirit and mindset. So he felt very strongly that it was important to have someone who had come from a startup and who had been a founder before to be a very prominent part of our leadership team at the presidential level. So it's those sorts of things where there's different ways of engaging with eBay as an enterprise. I know a lot of startups struggle with, well, what's going to happen to me when I get to a big enterprise like that? But it can take several different paths. It just depends on what the talent is and what the product is.
Just another point about Zong with David Marcus. It was just amazing that at Zong he managed approximately, 50 people or so? And so after 6 months at eBay, David Marcus rose to president of 13,000 people, of all of PayPal. So that was a pretty significant move for a startup founder inside of the whole eBay organization, which has about 31,000 people last time we counted. So David Marcus felt so strongly about having a startup culture that would nurture a company like Braintree that we acquired so recently for $800 million. We have actually done something very interesting with Braintree. So David really felt so strongly that they should stay as independent as possible and be able to execute their plan globally throughout the companies that PayPal currently operates in, over 190 markets and such. So he's having Bill Reddy, who's the CEO of Braintree, report directly to himself. And in fact, the team that I work on, the startup and developer relations team, now reports to Bill Reddy of Braintree. So in fact, teams are moving underneath Braintree. So Braintree bought Venmo, you may know, in 2012 for about $22 million. And so Venmo is sitting underneath Braintree. Braintree is now sitting underneath David Marcus, ex of Zong. And now the startup developer relations team is sitting right in the Venmo offices here in San Francisco. So it's been very interesting to work in the headquarters office and now working in the Venmo office. So,
how important is mobile to PayPal and eBay right now?
Braintree, $800 million.
I actually worked on the eBay Marketplace's mobile team prior to this role, and it's an incredibly important part of the direction of where eBay is going. Right now, the way that we report out our business is we actually report on the mobile business separately from all the other business. But when you start to hear leadership talking about things like that internally, eventually the mobile business will become the business. We won't separate it out anymore, so I guess that speaks for itself.
And one other thing, what we're doing with our PayPal mobile SDKs and the Braintree mobile SDK, we're going to put those together. So essentially it'll be a single mobile payments SDK that'll integrate both. Venmo Touch for P2P transactions will become PayPal Touch. So that's how we'll deal with Venmo. And then essentially we'll have a single SDK. There'll be some transition period where developers will still have to have a PayPal account, developer account, and a Braintree developer account. But essentially that's the strategy there, and that'll all come together. There might be a question on that. Should we take it? No. Yeah. Sure, I'll repeat the question. Do you have a question about that? Go ahead.
Thank you. I have a startup that's Braintree-powered marketplace. We're called Requip. We're for peer-to-peer transactions locally of sports gear. And our entire model is about reducing friction. And we chose Braintree because of the PayPal roll-up. How far away are we from seeing the, pay immediately with PayPal button so that we can really expedite the process of enrolling users and then making purchases?
I don't have an exact date. We're hoping to do things this year with regards to a feature like that. So whether it's 3 months or 4 months, I couldn't tell you for sure, but we're working as fast as we can on that one. Sorry, I don't have a timeline. If you want to talk afterwards about that more in depth, be happy to do that.
Does it feel crowded to you in the payment space right now? Because it seems like you guys have been plugging along, being an industry leader for so long at PayPal and eBay, and sort of a default standard. It's easy to pay with your bank account once you get through that test transaction period as a consumer. You know, what is it like when you see all these startups? And obviously, yes, you went and got Braintree and you got Venmo. Is it an energetic time? Does that spur you on? What is the sense of emotion in the company, and how entrepreneurial is everyone feeling? You know, is it kind of a startup-y, exciting time to be inside PayPal?
I'm very energized by the activity in the marketplaces. PayPal started because banks really have failed to innovate in a significant way, and that continues to be the case today. Whether we're innovating fast enough is a big question, and pointing to our Braintree acquisition, that's obviously how we brought new innovation internally. When you look at the recent acquisition of Simple, what was Bank Simple, by BBVA last week announced. Very interesting. What are banks going to do? Are they going to begin to innovate? Are they going to begin to acquire like Simple? Yes, a lot is happening with crowdfunding, with Bitcoin, with Internet of Things, micropayments. All these things is very energizing, very exciting. The company overall has a lot of excitement around that, and because of David Marcus and how he's operating the company, it's provided a lot of excitement internally to work at PayPal. And by the way, like those other guys, we're also hiring, I think, so.
Yeah, I was going to say, for a hot young dev who's really interested in the payment space, what do you say when you meet them at a hackathon, right? Like, why use the PayPal API? Why come to work for a big company when they might be tempted towards being in one of these little startups, or are those not mutually exclusive?
I don't think they're mutually exclusive, and I think we are making our best effort really to support the developer community. Last year in 2013, we launched a big hackathon series globally called Battle Hack. So Battle Hack started in 10 countries. We had 10 Battle Hack events in about 5 countries last year, and we're having about 13 this year, including in Asia, Mexico, Canada, Moscow, Tel Aviv, and such. We just came back last night from Miami, had an amazing hackathon there, and we aren't using that as any kind of HR effort, but really to promote the use of payment APIs at our hackathons and such. And
just to add to that, I think one of the other great things is that there's a bunch of sort of fundamental problems that we've already solved in terms of being, a bank in some of the European countries and overcoming some of the hurdles that are maybe not as sexy, so that we can just focus on some of the technology that I think a lot of kids coming out of college would love to participate in, or even entrepreneurs who are out there in the startup community. So a lot of the sort of plumbing has already been worked on, so that we can work on the fun stuff that sits on top of it that really energizes the customer experience and makes it amazing.
I guess one of the things I've been wondering about when I found out I was going to talk to you guys is, how do you think that if we look in 10, 15 years in the payment space, do you think that credit cards and linking our credit cards, our debit cards, are still going to be such a big role to expedite these transactions? I'm thinking of startups like Dwala, which have sort of taken a bit of an opposite tack, which is it's completely opt-in, right? So you have really slow user acquisition. You have to go piece by piece, but you're kind of skipping that whole really significant merchant piece in the revenue. Is that something that you guys would ever consider? Dropping credit cards, right? Or do you think that credit cards are going to play such a large role in the payment space when you look 15 years from now?
I'll start. So I actually think, credit cards have been a great way to pay for a lot of people, but it's not very well used, particularly in a country, for example, like Germany. They still just use their bank account. They have their bank account at the top of their letterhead. So I think it's going to vary. I think that the way that credit cards are used is going to be different. So the actual card may not necessarily have to be present. It may be something that's more of a mobile transaction. But I think a lot of the security is going to be the part that's going to be interesting. So how do you access your funds in a different way? It may not be the physical card anymore, but it may be some way that still uses the rails of what's already been put in place.
Very diplomatic. What was I going to ask you? What's the conversation like with entrepreneurs right now? What are some of the ways you guys are drawing in devs and startups, and what are some of the can you tell us a little bit more about your, program to bring people into the PayPal and eBay ecosystem, what that looks like, some of the events, and is that kind of focused in the Bay Area? Are you looking all over the world? Sort of where are you focusing your efforts to really recruit the best talent and create kind of really robust systems?
Sure. So Startup Blueprint is a global program. So we're reaching out to accelerators, incubators, VC funds globally. And we look to work with hundreds of startups, if not more. Same with developers. We're global outreach. We're hiring all around the world to build up those efforts. And just trying to create not only goodwill with startups, but opportunities for partnership, potential co-investment, acquisition, and such.
So this is a sweet spot for the new role that I have. So one of the ways, I would say that there's a couple different ways that we are reaching out to them. First of all, it's at universities. So many universities across particularly North America are starting to have a master's degree in entrepreneurship, or they have programs where you can actually be an entrepreneur and get college course credit for it, which is kind of a big deal because, for example, the boss that I work for, he went to Cornell but never finished because he started a startup and he couldn't get credit for that work, even though it's probably more valuable in his life now than even having a degree. And so we're starting to reach out to some of those universities and working with them to talk about doing things in the e-commerce space or the payment space. So that's one way. Another way is working with the accelerators and incubators. There's a ton of talent there. Sometimes things don't work out. This is another great place where they might be able to fulfill a career. And then the third area is really around just the community at large. So a lot of meetups and hackathons and things like that. We have inside our company, just because of all the acquisitions that we've had, we have quite a few founders who work internally still at the company. And those founders get very excited and energized when they start to interact in the startup community. And so they're doing a lot of outreach in their local region. As an example, we have the founder of Decide.com up in Seattle who's doing a lot of those sorts of things. We've got someone who worked at Hunch, who is up in New York, and he's doing the same thing. And we've got some folks in Tel Aviv, Israel, who are also doing that. So we'll have pockets of that sort of very regional sort of recruiting that's happening with the founders that we have within our company.
Questions? More questions? Come on.
Answers?
Yeah. There's one back there. Tentative. Go for it.
Don't be shy. We
Right?
don't bite.
No? You're just stretching? Oh, he retracted his question.
Hi, I'm a founder of a startup, and we use PayPal as part of our SaaS payment processing. We're not in your accelerator, but is there any plans to encourage startups to use your payment engine versus others?
Sure. For startups that are not a part of an accelerator or incubator, we're thinking about how we could work individually with startups and potentially help them out with transaction fees and that. Working through the incubators and accelerators just give us a much simpler way to scale, and provide those benefits. So there might be like a Blueprint Lite program for individual startups. Thanks for the question.
Oh, sure.
Does that answer it? Yeah.
I'm in actually an accelerator, so
Thank you all.
Thanks.